April 6, 1945. Radar Picket Stations, Okinawa. Lieutenant Howell Shearing commanded Landing Craft Support Large 51, one of several gunboats tasked with protecting the radar pickets. His evaluation of the situation was stark. The destroyers were deliberately exposed, acting as decoys to draw enemy attacks away from the main fleet. Their mission was clear: lure kamikaze pilots toward the pickets, coordinate American fighter interception, and prevent strikes from reaching carriers and transport ships. Far to the north, at the training grounds of Kanoya Airfield, Lieutenant Yukioki reviewed operational plans with pilots of the 2001st Air Group. The mission, designated Operation Kikusui No. 1, or Floating Chrysanthemums, involved 355 kamikaze aircraft and 341 conventional bombers in synchronized waves against the American naval forces. The youngest pilots were just 17, with training limited to 7 days of formation flying, 2 days of takeoff drills, and 3 days practicing attack runs. Navigation was rudimentary. Escort aircraft would guide the strike force to the fleet. Combat maneuvering was largely irrelevant. Their objective was singular: aim and dive. Vice Admiral Kakajiro Onishi had formalized the kamikaze program in October 1944, transforming sporadic suicide missions into organized strategic attacks. Lieutenant Yukioki had led the first effective operation, sinking the USS St. Lo in late October. These pilots possessed a tactical awareness of American radar capabilities that exceeded the understanding of many Japanese commanders. Radar pickets around Okinawa were not mere observation posts. They directed fighter coverage up to 50 miles from the fleet. Yet, isolated 30 to 60 miles from reinforcements, each destroyer could be overwhelmed by concentrated mass attacks before support arrived. The calculus of sacrifice was brutally simple. If 1 in 6 kamikaze planes struck a target, the exchange heavily favored Japan. 1 lightly armed aircraft for hundreds of American sailors and a $1 million warship. As dawn approached on April 6th, American destroyers took station along the picket line. Each post covered a patrol radius of roughly 5,000 yards, with the lead destroyer at the center and 2 to 4 support craft in a diamond formation. Steamed at 15 knots, reversing course every half hour to complicate potential submarine attacks. The latest radar technologies had transformed naval warfare into a domain of electronic detection and precision fire. SC-2 air search radar swept the skies every 4 seconds. SG surface search surveillance maintained uninterrupted ocean surveillance. And Mark 12 and Mark 22 fire control radars directed gunnery with unprecedented accuracy. SP height-finding radar determined aircraft altitudes for guiding interceptors. Combat air patrols provided continuous coverage, typically 2 F-6F Hellcats or F-4U Corsairs per station during daylight hours. Even under ideal conditions, response times from carriers to the outer pickets were 20 to 30 minutes, a delay that could prove decisive. At 0300 hours, radar operators along the picket line detected the first waves of Kikusui No. 1 approaching from the northwest. Tactical plots displayed over 100 inbound aircraft converging on the stations. Fighter direction officers, including Lieutenant Frank Adams, scrambled limited interceptors, 2 Corsairs against over 30 kamikaze planes. The odds were catastrophic. The enemy formations had already descended to wave-top altitude, using the radar horizon to conceal their final approach. On the USS Bush, stationed at Radar Picket No. 1, the Combat Information Center monitored the incoming raids from multiple vectors. One group, approximately 40 aircraft, approached from a 340-degree bearing. Another, more than 20, came from 015 degrees. A third, unidentified in composition, advanced from 285 degrees. Every sweep of the radar screen signaled imminent impact, the operators aware that these numbers represented not just enemy planes, but lives and ships hanging in the balance. Commander Roland Westholm had drilled his gun crews relentlessly for precisely this scenario. Each team was instructed to continuously track approaching targets, engage once aircraft reached approximately 12,000 yards, regardless of fire solution precision, and maintain the maximum rate of fire until the enemy either was destroyed or passed overhead.
There were no hold-fire orders. Every aircraft advancing on the picket line was assumed hostile. The USS Bush's trial began mid-afternoon. Early success saw 2 incoming planes shot down, but a Nakajima B-6N torpedo bomber managed to penetrate the defensive barrage. Striking the starboard side between the forward stacks, its bomb detonated within the forward engine room. Steam erupted violently from ruptured lines, killing 14 crew members instantly. Despite the damage, Bush remained afloat. Firefighting and damage control teams worked in tandem while gunners continued to engage successive waves of attackers. At 1700 hours, the destroyer Colquhoun maneuvered alongside Bush to provide support, bringing 4 combat air patrol fighters with her. Chaos erupted overhead as 40 to 50 Japanese aircraft swarmed both ships. At 1730 hours, Colquhoun was struck directly when a Zero dove onto her main deck, followed in rapid succession by 3 additional kamikaze impacts. Commander George Wilson ordered the crew to abandon ship as Colquhoun began to break apart, ultimately sinking with 35 fatalities among her complement.
Bush persisted despite extensive damage. At 1725, a second kamikaze crashed into the port side between the stacks, nearly splitting the vessel in 2. By 1745, a third plane struck port above the main deck, igniting ammunition and spreading fires beyond containment. At 1830, Bush capsized and sank. 87 of her 307 crew perished, including personnel from Commander James Willis's staff attached as the leader of Destroyer Division 48. Survivors endured up to 10 hours in the water awaiting rescue. LCSL-64 arrived at 21:30, retrieving exhausted oil-covered sailors while Japanese aircraft still threatened the area. The scale of destruction on April 6th was staggering. Kamikaze attacks sank Bush, Colquhoun, Emmons, and the destroyer Minesweeper. Emmons and 2 ammunition ships, along with 10 additional vessels, sustained damage. Yet the strategic purpose of the radar pickets had been fulfilled. The main fleet anchored at Hagushi remained largely unscathed. The decoy destroyers had absorbed the brunt of the Japanese assault, shielding carriers, transports, and troop ships from direct attack. On April 15, 1945, USS Laffy assumed duty at Radar Picket Station No. 1, relieving the J. William D. Commander Frederick Beckton convened with department heads to assess evolving tactics. Japanese forces had adapted. Subsequent attacks relied on smaller formations, often approaching at dawn or dusk. Individual aircraft exploited cloud cover and rain squalls to evade radar detection, demonstrating tactical flexibility and the increasing peril faced by isolated picket stations. USS Laffy faced a relentless test of endurance as Japanese aircraft executed coordinated, multi-directional strikes designed to overwhelm the ship's fire control systems. Though the destroyer had survived previous kamikaze assaults in Lingayen Gulf and Iwo Jima, the proximity of Okinawa to Japanese air bases on Kyushu and Formosa introduced an entirely different operational tempo. Continuous waves of attackers left no room for rest. General quarters persisted from dawn through dusk and often extended into the night, straining both crew and machinery. At 0727, the Combat Information Center detected a lone aircraft approaching from 020 degrees at a distance of 11 miles. The attacker, a Val dive bomber, skimmed the sea's surface using the low morning sun to conceal its trajectory. Commander Frederick Beckton immediately ordered hard right rudder and flank speed, driving Laffy to a sharp turn and accelerating beyond 30 knots. The Val adjusted its angle, setting its sights on the bridge. Starboard batteries opened fire at 2,000 yards, unleashing a barrage that struck the aircraft repeatedly. Despite sustaining numerous hits, the Val pressed forward. At 500 yards, a 5-inch shell exploded directly beneath it, ripping off the left wing and sending the fuselage cartwheeling into the sea roughly 50 yards from Laffy's hull. This initial engagement was only the opening phase. By 0800, radar operators reported multiple groups converging on the station, with an estimated 50 planes approaching in dispersed formations. Combat air patrol units engaged, but they were heavily outnumbered. Over the next 80 minutes, Laffy endured one of the most intense concentrated kamikaze attacks in destroyer history. 22 attacking aircraft targeted the ship in both individual and coordinated strikes. The gunners established a disciplined rhythm, tracking each incoming aircraft with relentless focus. Fire from multiple mounts was synchronized to maintain continuous coverage, shifting immediately to new targets after confirmed hits. There were no pauses, no celebratory acknowledgement of successful kills. The next threat was always seconds away. Early in the engagement, the first 8 aircraft were destroyed by highly accurate coordinated fire, demonstrating the lethality of radar-directed gunnery combined with trained crew coordination. The intensity of this operation exemplified the brutal reality faced by radar picket stations during the Okinawa campaign, where vigilance, precision, and rapid response determined survival. At 0827, Laffy's defenses were breached. A Yokosuka D4 wide Judy approached from the stern, a sector where fewer guns could bear, exploiting a vulnerable angle in the ship's coverage. Despite sustaining repeated hits from 40mm and 20mm batteries, the aircraft impacted gun mount 53, the after 5-inch turret. The explosion instantly killed 6 crew members, including the mount captain, gunner's mate First Class Lawrence Dolofsky, who had been directing the mount under local control. Flames rapidly engulfed the fantail, ammunition began cooking off, and Mount 53 was effectively destroyed, marking the 16th heavy gun taken out of action. Minutes later, a second Judy attacked from the port quarter, crashing into the after deck house and annihilating 2 20mm mounts along with their crews. Fires spread quickly toward the aft magazine, forcing damage control teams into an exhausting battle to contain the inferno. While crews fought the blaze, the 11th attacker, a Vol dive bomber, released a bomb that struck between the ship's stacks, detonating inside the machine shop. The blast ruptured steam lines and cut electrical power to half the aft gun mounts, including 42 and 43, which had to be manually operated, drastically reducing their rate of fire. By 0900, Laffy confronted its most critical hour. 4 kamikaze aircraft struck simultaneously from multiple vectors. The overloaded fire control system could only target 2. The first Vol slammed into a mount. The second struck the port side near the waterline. The third dropped a bomb that exploded within the after engine room. The 4th aircraft was destroyed roughly 100 yards from the ship by close-range gunfire fired by Seaman Arafat, who remained at his 20mm position despite sustaining shrapnel injuries. The vessel burned from bridge to stern. The rudder jammed hard to port, forcing Laffy into a continuous circle at a reduced speed of 8 knots. Casualties among the crew had reached 1/3, with 6 gun mounts damaged or destroyed. Commander Becton received damage reports from all departments, revealing the magnitude of the crisis. Despite the catastrophic impact, the forward gun mounts were still operational, and the damage control teams managed to contain key fires. The ship remained afloat, battered but not lost, a testament to both crew determination and the resilience of her construction. When Lieutenant Frank Manson, Assistant Communications Officer, suggested preparing to abandon ship, Commander Becton's response became emblematic of naval resolve. He refused to leave as long as a single gun could fire. A nearby lookout quietly added, "And if I can find one man to fire it." That statement would soon be tested. In the following 20 minutes, 4 more kamikaze aircraft approached. Laffy's gunners successfully neutralized 3, but the 4th, a Mitsubishi Zero carrying a 550-pound bomb, struck the base of the forward stack. The force of the impact lifted the entire bridge structure before violently slamming it down again. All personnel in the Combat Information Center were knocked unconscious for several moments.
Upon regaining consciousness, thick smoke filled the compartment, and radar scopes flickered and went dead. For nearly 3 minutes, Laffy was effectively blind and silent, her centralized command and sensor network disabled. During this critical interval, the 20th Kamikaze approached. Without radar warning or coordinated support, the ship's gun crews operated on initiative alone. On Mount 44, gunners made First Class Robert Carr spotted a Val dive bomber descending from 8,000 feet. Despite operating in manual mode due to damage, Carr and his team maintained continuous fire, detonating the aircraft approximately 500 feet above the deck. Shrapnel and debris rained across the forward sections, disrupting the Kamikaze but sparing critical systems. The 21st Kamikaze emerged from the smoke created by Laffy's own fires. A Nakajima B-6N Kate torpedo bomber flying at wave-top height aimed directly for the forward magazine. Seamen fought Tredays, still manning a damaged 20mm mount, identified the aircraft 400 yards away and unleashed a prolonged burst of fire, striking the engine. The Kate faltered, nosedived, and crashed into the water just 30 yards from the port side. The resulting explosion drenched the ship in seawater, partially suppressing the surrounding fires. The final attacker, the 22nd Kamikaze, appeared at 0947. By this point, Laffy had endured continuous assault for 80 minutes. Ammunition was critically low, crew fatigue was extreme, and roughly 70% of defensive firepower had been compromised. Supporting LCSL-51, a gunboat under Lieutenant Howell Cheering, maneuvered between the Kamikaze and Laffy, providing both cover and additional firepower. The pilot of the final Val had only seconds to decide between the destroyer and the less valuable gunboat. Choosing Laffy, the aircraft passed just 50 feet above LCSL-51's mast, its fixed landing gear dangerously close. Cheering's gunners engaged, sending smoke and flames trailing from the Val before it crashed into the sea roughly 100 yards from Laffy. By the conclusion of this sustained attack, Laffy had survived 22 kamikaze assaults within 80 minutes. She had been struck directly by 6 aircraft and 4 bombs, suffering 32 fatalities and 71 wounded among her crew, yet she remained afloat. The survival of the vessel, though seemingly impossible, was the result of a combination of skill, technology, and mathematical advantage. Over 8,000 rounds of ammunition had been expended. 9 kamikaze aircraft were destroyed outright by gunfire, while 4 others were damaged severely enough to miss or crash before reaching their targets. Fire control radar, even under partial failure, provided accurate tracking solutions, and proximity-fused shells multiplied the defensive effectiveness of each engagement. The coordination achieved by the Combat Information Center ensured that, despite severe structural damage and crew casualties, Laffy's defensive network functioned as a cohesive system, absorbing the fury of the Japanese attacks while protecting the broader fleet. The Okinawa radar Picket system demonstrated the transformative power of technology and crew proficiency under extreme conditions. Even when partially disabled, Laffy and other destroyers proved that training, coordination, and advanced fire control could overcome both the physical and psychological impact of kamikaze assaults. The concept of radar pickets marked a pivotal evolution in naval warfare. For the first time, electronic detection and fire control assumed greater importance than traditional metrics such as armor thickness or ship speed. The destroyers deployed around Okinawa were more than early warning vessels. They functioned as command hubs, orchestrating a complex 3-dimensional battlefield that extended 60 miles across the sea and 30,000 feet vertically. Fighter direction teams aboard these ships fundamentally changed air defense doctrine, managing thousands of intercepts
and effectively destroying nearly 1,900 Japanese aircraft before they could reach attack positions. These ships extended the reach of American sensors beyond human sight and cognition, engaging targets under conditions that would have rendered conventional methods ineffective. Darkness, smoke, and inclement weather posed no obstacle to radar-directed fire. Yet the human cost of this technological advance was immense. During the 82-day Okinawa campaign, radar picket stations bore the brunt of Japan's most desperate attacks. 15 destroyers and destroyer minesweepers were sunk, while 45 others were damaged. More than 4,900 sailors were killed or wounded on picket duty alone. These vessels served simultaneously as sentinels and sacrificial shields, absorbing the concentrated attacks meant for the main fleet and allowing carriers, transports, and larger warships to remain largely unscathed. On May 4th, Kamikaze strikes claimed the destroyers Morrison and Lau at Picket Station No. 1. Morrison sank within minutes after being hit by 4 aircraft in rapid succession, resulting in the loss of 152 of her 331-man crew. Despite perfect radar tracking and continuous gunfire, sheer numbers dictated the outcome. Captain Rikihei Inguchi, who had helped formalize kamikaze tactics, later observed that the American destroyers fought with extraordinary valor. Their radar and fire control gave them capabilities the attackers had not anticipated. The ability to detect formations over home airfields, track planes hundreds of miles across the ocean, and deliver devastatingly accurate anti-aircraft fire. Inguchi noted a crucial insight. Japanese planners had assumed the radar picket's isolation would make them easy targets. In practice, each picket was integrated into a network defensive system spanning the entire fleet. A single destroyer faced not only its own firepower, but coordinated responses from multiple ships and hundreds of fighters. The technological gap between attacker and defender had become insurmountable. Obsolete aircraft and minimally trained pilots confronted radar-directed guns, proximity-fused munitions, and carrier-based fighter interceptors guided by experienced controllers 50 miles from the target. The psychological effect on Japanese air crews was severe. Pilots expecting disorganized targets were confronted by a rigorously coordinated, mathematically precise defensive apparatus. By May 11th, Japanese commanders had begun adapting their tactics to counter the radar picket's effectiveness. Attacks shifted towards stations with degraded radar coverage due to weather or terrain. Aircraft flew at low altitude using islands for concealment, and chaff was deployed to produce false returns. Electronic warfare had evolved on both sides, but American technological development consistently outpaced Japanese countermeasures. New SP height-finding radars eliminated vertical blind spots, enhanced IFF systems prevented friendly fire, and intership data links enabled coordinated multi-station defense. Each technological refinement amplified the fleet's survivability and operational reach, reinforcing the decisive role of innovation in modern naval warfare.
On May 11, 1945, the destroyer Hugh W. Hadley, stationed at Radar Picket Position 15, provided a striking demonstration of how advanced detection and coordination could alter the outcome of aerial assaults. Over the course of multiple waves, the ship faced more than 150 Japanese aircraft, a combination of kamikaze and conventional planes, intent on breaching the fleet's outer defenses. Within the Combat Information Center, crews managed 6 simultaneous radar tracks while directing 12 combat air patrol fighters and synchronizing gunfire with 3 supporting vessels. Despite intense strikes, the Hadley destroyed 23 attacking aircraft. The ship sustained heavy damage, with 28 crew members killed and 67 wounded, yet it remained afloat, a survival that would have been impossible without its integrated radar systems. Commander Melanie, Hadley's captain, later described the experience as a new form of naval forward positioning. Unlike infantry scouts limited to visual observation, radar picket crews could detect threats up to 50 miles away, allowing them to anticipate and engage approaching enemy aircraft with unprecedented precision. Our radar, he noted, gave us vision far beyond human sight, making it possible to confront waves of destruction before they could strike. The strategic impact extended beyond immediate tactical survival. American shipyards had achieved a production pace exceeding 200 radar sets per month, maintaining technological superiority, while Japanese aircraft output had dwindled below 500 planes monthly, most of which were outdated designs. The operational equation was stark. Each Kamikaze intercepted represented months of Japanese training and preparation lost forever, while each American vessel damaged could be repaired and returned with enhanced systems and experienced crews. What Japanese strategists had intended as attritional warfare only highlighted the advantage of American industrial capacity, ensuring that the United States could absorb losses without compromising overall combat readiness. By June 22nd, organized Japanese resistance on Okinawa effectively ended. Over 90 days, radar picket ships had tracked thousands of inbound attacks, directed fighters to intercept over 1,900 raids, and directly engaged roughly 600 kamikaze aircraft that managed to penetrate defensive screens. The operational lessons reshaped planning for future operations. Operation Downfall, the anticipated invasion of the Japanese home islands, incorporated the Okinawa experience in full. Extensive radar picket lines, manned by hundreds of destroyers equipped with the latest electronic detection and fire control systems, would establish a virtual protective barrier around the invasion fleet. Air direction and engagement were centralized through dedicated command vessels, ensuring that attacking aircraft encountered coordinated, integrated air defense networks stretching hundreds of miles, rather than isolated ship defenses. In his final assessment before leading a kamikaze mission on August 15, 1945, Admiral Mate Ugaki of the 5th Air Fleet recognized the magnitude of the technological advantage. He observed that American radar pickets created an invisible barrier that Japanese pilots could detect but not penetrate. Our aircraft strike the fleet as though hitting an impenetrable wall, he noted. The target is visible, yet unreachable. In the end, technology has outmatched the courage of our air crews. The performance of Hadley and other radar picket destroyers illustrated the decisive role of integrated electronic warfare, fire control, and centralized coordination in modern naval combat. Individual bravery remained essential, but survival and mission success increasingly depended on the combination of advanced technology and industrial capacity, factors that redefined the dynamics of Pacific warfare in 1945.
The USS Laffy survived the Pacific War and continued in active service for 3 decades before ultimately being preserved as a museum ship. While her radar systems would later appear rudimentary compared with contemporary technology, at the time they represented a transformative leap in naval warfare. The capability to detect and track multiple aerial threats well beyond visual range and direct shipboard weaponry with precise calculations fundamentally altered the dynamics of combat at sea. Reflecting on his experiences, Commander Frederick Beckton emphasized the broader implications. Victory in modern conflict would no longer rely solely on courage or the willingness to endure sacrifice.
Success depended on the integration of advanced technology with the industrial capacity to produce it in overwhelming quantities. The radar picket destroyers were more than defensive platforms. They embodied the technological edge that would define American naval power. The human toll of these operations was immense. Approximately 5,000 American sailors were killed or wounded while serving on radar picket duty. Nearly 2,000 kamikaze sorties were launched, claiming the lives of hundreds of Japanese pilots, most of whom completed their missions at the cost of their own survival. Yet from these losses arose a new paradigm of warfare. The decisive factor in battle was no longer sheer firepower or personal valor, but the ability to collect, analyze, and act on information more efficiently than an adversary. The radar picket destroyers had not merely intercepted kamikaze attacks, they had demonstrated the future trajectory of naval and aerial combat. In the waters surrounding Okinawa, the wrecks of dozens of American destroyers rest alongside hundreds of Japanese aircraft, memorializing the courage and sacrifice of all involved. Beyond heroism, these encounters marked a fundamental shift, the era of the warrior giving way to the era of the technician. Combat decisions, once dependent on instinct and experience, increasingly relied on data, calculations, and electronic coordination. Success in future conflicts would hinge on the ability to design, deploy, and operate sophisticated sensor systems and networks. The Okinawa radar pickets highlighted this evolution, revealing that command and control, real-time information processing, and the integration of fire control systems would determine operational outcomes. Their legacy was not measured in armor or cannon fire, but in the electronic arrays that gave crews the ability to anticipate threats and neutralize them before they could inflict catastrophic damage. The lessons of Okinawa codified the rise of the electronic battlefield, where nations capable of harnessing technology, processing information, and coordinating responses with speed and precision would dominate the conflicts of the future.
March 24, 1945. Combat Information Center, USS Bush, northwest of Okinawa. On the darkened bridge of the USS Bush, the faint, eerie glow of the SG surface search radar painted moving arcs across the display screen. Radar operator Second Assistant James Patterson fine-tuned the gain, eyes tracking the latest sweep. The blip pattern indicated multiple contacts on a 340-degree bearing, approximately 62 miles out, an estimated force of over 50 aircraft approaching from Kyushu. Commander Roland Westholm reached for the TBS radio handset, preparing to alert Task Force 58. By this stage of the Okinawa campaign, 16 radar picket stations had been strategically positioned around the island, forming an electronic perimeter that no Japanese aircraft could breach undetected. Yet this very advantage would provoke the most desperate and lethal aerial assaults in naval history. The Imperial Japanese Navy's kamikaze units were trained for singular, uncompromising objectives: penetrate American defenses and deliver their aircraft into the hulls of warships, sacrificing both plane and pilot in the process. The radar picket destroyers, positioned as early warning outposts, became the first line of defense and the first targets. Every pilot represented a calculation in human terms: one aircraft, one ship. Across the Pacific, destroyers had shifted roles from anti-submarine patrol to electronic sentinels, each one a crucial node in the island's defensive web. Stations were arrayed between 15 and 95 miles from Point Bolo on Okinawa's Zamper-Misaki Peninsula, with 7 operational by April 1st and 9 more added as the campaign advanced. Far out to sea, the USS Laffy plowed through rolling swells at 15 knots. Displacing 2,200 tons, the Sumner-class destroyer carried a crew of 336 men and a formidable suite of anti-aircraft weapons designed to engage incoming aircraft. Armament included 6 5-inch dual-purpose guns in twin mounts, 12 40mm Bofors in quad and twin configurations, and 11 20mm Ehrlichen cannons positioned strategically across the vessel. The ship's Combat Information Center represented the pinnacle of American naval technology. With integrated Mark 37 gun directors and Mark 25 fire control radars, the CIC unified multiple sensor inputs into a single, cohesive tactical display. Air search radars reached out over 60 miles. Surface search radars tracked ships to 15 miles, and height-finding equipment calculated the altitudes of incoming planes. Fighter direction circuits linked the destroyer to combat air patrols overhead, coordinating both defensive fire and intercept operations. These innovations revolutionized naval gunnery. Visual aiming methods of earlier years had produced hit rates below 2% against maneuvering aircraft. Radar-directed fire increased effective accuracy to approximately 20% under optimal conditions. When paired with proximity-fused shells, which detonated near targets without requiring direct strikes, the destroyer's defensive firepower multiplied dramatically. For the men aboard, each sweep of the radar and each controlled volley of gunfire represented the combined efforts of mathematics, engineering, and human vigilance, a fragile barrier against a determined and lethal enemy.